discussion, to just give it a direction, we were discussing before this event that how we are going to take this forward. So well-being, what I believe is feeling well emotionally, mentally, feeling content financially, and feeling safe in the surrounding where I'm working and with the people with whom I'm working. Now, thinking from an Indian perspective, there are multiple levels of discussions happen about this, because we know that as women, we go through different phases. There are physical changes, there are a lot of emotional challenges. There is like marriage, motherhood, a lot of things, they come and they go, and in different phases we face different kind of challenges. So some of those challenges I was thinking about, like getting equal opportunity at work, work-life balance. The stress of finding the balance itself causes a lot of trouble in women's life. Health and safety at workplace. Career development and getting the right kind of mentorship throughout the career. And creating a transparent communication with the colleagues, with the clients and other people and stakeholders at the workplace. So without much delaying, I will go to our honorable guests today. They are running this organization, Black Women Be Whole, and they are providing safe space for Black women. So let us hear from them what they have to share. They started their journey in 2018, and Ednesha, being the therapist, Kimberly shared the story. It's very inspiring. So let us hear from them the work they are doing, then we can take this discussion to the next level. You'll be going to the podium. Yeah. They have a presentation, I believe.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it, and we've had an amazing time thus far. Okay, so whenever we do a presentation, it's so important for us to introduce who we are. Right? I think it's so important for people to know where this all comes from. So I have been a therapist for over 10 years. And so I primarily see people of color. 85% of the people I see is women as well. So that is very important to me, the emotional health and the well-being of women. So I've been doing this over 10 years now. So I facilitate trainings for women. I supervise other therapists as well. So I am the co-creator of Black Women Be Whole. And we also actually wrote a book to help women with their well-being. I actually have it. So Kim, you can finish. I'll go get the book and show you guys.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Yes, I am Kimberly M. By trade, I come from the nonprofit industry, working with women, education, that kind of thing, and fundraising. So doing this work is really important to me because it's all that, helping women to see themselves in a way that, they may not, is really special for me. As she said, I'm also the co-creator. We have a podcast, but I'm also a lover of all kinds of music. We tell people, bring your full self somewhere because I don't compartmentalize, right? Like who I am is really important in all the spaces I come into because that's how you get to know me. What I do is sometimes not important to me as who I am or the essence of myself because I do a lot of things. And which one do I tell you about today? Because I do all of them. And I think for women, all of the roles and identities that were talked about earlier come into play and we have to navigate those different roles and identities. And so I think showing your full self, I'm a lot of fun, right? And being able to tell people a little bit about me is important.
Yeah, so I think that we always put into our presentations all the roles that we play. And I think someone brought that up earlier about the roles that they play. And so I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm an aunt, I'm a wife, I'm a caretaker, I'm a friend. And so when I walk into the room, I bring all of that into the room. And I think we put this up here because we want you also to think about yourselves in that way. What are all the roles that I play? Because they're going to impact my well-being. Because as a daughter and a sister and an aunt, everyone's kind of pulling on you, right? They all want a piece of you, of course, because they love you. And you feel like you have responsibilities to them. But what does that do to you sometimes? And I think that we're up here because we want you to think about where's that space for you? Do you carve out that space for yourself after you tend to all of the roles that you play? I also put that I love to travel the world. I love to visit national parks in the US. Are we thinking about all the pieces of our lives? What are the things that you love to do? What are your hobbies? We talk so much about business, and I understand that because that's why we're here. But what about the other pieces of you? Do you think about the other pieces of you? Because you bring those into the business as well. And do people understand the other pieces of you? So I think when we do this, we just want everyone to bring their full self to every room that they walk into, because all of those things are important. So the fact that I love to travel and the fact that I love national parks, all of that becomes important when you get to know me, and all of that becomes important in my work. So that's really important. So Black Women Behold, so our mission is to create spaces for Black women to reflect, connect, unpack, and start their healing journey. So this is really important because just so you guys have an understanding of the lives of Black women in the USA. So we deal with racism, we deal with sexism, and we deal with financial inequality. And so because of those things, those impact our well-being every day. That puts us maybe in a sense of stress, a feeling of stress every day. So you can have like maybe an understanding of what that looks like. When I talk about financial inequality, Black women make 63 cents on the dollar. So that means that I would have to work 20 months to make the same amount that a white man would make in America.
In 12 months.
In 12 months, excuse me. So I have to work 20 months to make what he makes in 12 months. So that is a source of stress. And so what happens is we wanted to make sure that Black women had a space to find their joy. Because for us, joy is something you have to choose every day. It doesn't just come to you. So you have to figure out, where in my life can I find that joy? We wanted to help them communicate their thoughts and their feelings. A lot of times we are in workplaces where our needs and our wants are not prioritized. So we have to figure out, how do we advocate for ourselves? And so this was really important. And creating a sense of sisterhood is really important too, which means for all of you in this room also, it's about support. And I think that what I felt these 2 days here was that there's so much support in the room, right? And it's also intergenerational, right? So you have older people here, you have younger people, and everyone is trying to impart something on each other to create this sisterhood, I feel like, in business. So I think it's so important that we have that, and we understood that as Black women in the United States, we needed that sisterhood so we could feel safe, so that we can go out and do the best job possible in our lives, but we needed a space to feel safe. And Kim and I, before we started this, we went around to different events, and we realized that we couldn't find anything that we were the focus, that we were the priority. And so we said, why don't we build it, right? And here we are, I guess, almost 4 years later, right? And we're doing workshops with women, we're doing events, we do retreats with women as well. I wanted to tell you, and we also published this book, and it's called Hey Sis, Are You Okay? So a lot of times in America, we'll ask you, hey, are you okay? And a lot of us will say, I'm okay, but I was crying in the closet earlier, right? But I'm not really okay. And so this book allows people to kind of self-reflect and be more introspective about who they are, and to then ask themselves every day, am I okay? And if I'm not okay, how do I become okay? And so I think we want to impart that on you too. I'm not sure if you guys say, are you okay? But if you think about, like, how am I doing? And you can look in a mirror and you can ask yourself that. And be truthful with yourself. How am I doing? And if I'm not doing well, think about, well, how can I be better? Like, what can I do to help myself be better? So I think that's so important. But I would love to take this around the room if you guys want to take a look at it. Thank you. Yeah.
So today's discussion, we're going to go through, I think, which everyone has acknowledged, is the impact of the pandemic. It's been so disruptive to us. There's been negative and positive impact. Some stress factors, what we're calling emotional intelligence to help build wellness. Self-management, how do you use emotional intelligence to do self-management? And then some ways to manage stress. So we're noticing people from the pandemic, right, are talking more and more about how the pandemic has impacted them. And I think that that's important because it requires us to stop and think about, how have I been affected? And to take up space to say that, right? Like in America, they have you act as if it hasn't happened. Like, come back to work when something so traumatic has happened. and it's changed the world globally. So we just really noticed that women were coming to get support, and they were willing to have these conversations, which I think helped our business to grow more. Good thing for us, but also a terrible thing for the world.
And I'll just say that my main job as a therapist, what I didn't know that I would start to see more people than I had saw before in the pandemic. So when the pandemic first hit, I was working in my office, of course, and then we all had to go home. Everyone experienced that. But a lot of my work is in person. And with the insurance companies in the States, we didn't know if they would pay for people to be able to still have the service. So I had no idea what would happen with my livelihood when the pandemic hit. But what I noticed is that people had to sit with their feelings, and they had to realize, wait, I need more help than I think I need. Like, this is, we were in a time where there was so much uncertainty, there was so much grief, there was so much loss that we were having, that people realized that they needed so much more support. And so I really was able to see how the pandemic was impacting people's well-being. And I was able to take that back to the business, right? And for us to put some things in place in our workshops to speak to that.
So we broke it up because work and personal. I think for a lot of people, when they were home, a lot of people didn't go back to work after the pandemic because they realized the environment that they were in 5 days a week, 80 hours a week was impacting their health, physical, emotional, all of the things, right? Like, and who wants to deal with that? Once you were able to get home, get away, kind of like discover who you are uninterrupted. How many people started a business during the pandemic? Like, really were able to, because you had the time to really focus on you. Who started a new hobby? Like, someone said they wanted to go play their violin, like, or you were becoming creative. You were able to do things in the absence of this thing that was always constantly weighing on you. And, the way systems work and bureaucracies work, they're not sometimes to your benefit. And so I think these are the stress factors that our clients have talked about. I work from home in my pajamas for the most part because I didn't have to wear any clothes, and then when it was time to come back out, I was like, oh, this is terrible. I don't know what to do now. So I think just kind of those things that weighed on me, but also that impacted me as well. And I think the pandemic allowed people to slow down their lives, which we've noticed. And so being able to really focus on how these things are impacting you, what you want, your motivations, has been, again, positive and negative. Being able to take it and see it for what it is and how you can use it to grow or motivate yourself has also been important, what we talked about with clients. So,
I also want to speak about a lot of the Black people in America did not want to return to work because of microaggressions that we were feeling, the racism. Also, we didn't want to go back to unhealthy work environments. And so a lot of people are deciding to just strictly work from home, which as a therapist is also not the best thing because then you don't have a community, right? You don't have the support that you need. But I also understood that people were focusing and prioritizing the things that were important to them, which was family. And I heard a bit of that while I was here, right? A lot of women decided, I want to focus on my family. I want to work there because there's so much that I can do there, and maybe that is more important.
Or I want to build my own dream and create something that has been sitting on my heart or speaking to me. So, for the entrepreneurs in the pandemic.
Yeah, and a lot of people just want to be more creative. So what we're seeing in America is a lot of hybrid work. So some people are going to work maybe 2 days a week and then they're home. And especially parents are realizing that they have so much more quality time to spend with their children because they realize how much they weren't seeing their children. Because, in America, we call it the grind culture, which means you just work. You work, and we just don't have as much time for family. And we're realizing that we want that more. And so how important that is to have more of that balance. So I think that we need to talk about emotional intelligence, because a bit of it is about how do I regulate my emotions? And I don't know, well, I do know maybe, but is that something that you guys talk a bit about, is about regulating emotions? But I think it becomes really important. So it says it's a set of skills that help us recognize, understand, and manage our emotions, as well as recognize and understand the impact that our emotions have on others. So for us, a lot of our work is about acknowledging how you feel, right? So that once you acknowledge it, you can deal with it a little bit better. And it's also so important to understand the impact your emotions are having on other people in your life as well. So when we talk about self-awareness, we just want you to really identify what emotions you feel and why you feel them. A lot of us are pushing our emotions down, thinking that they're not important, but they are impacting us in how we relate to other people throughout the day. So that becomes really important.
Well, I think also the outcome of that self-awareness is you have healthy relationships, you have healthy communication, and you have less conflict in your life. And who doesn't want that? You know, you want to have better relationships with people, but also that starts with you, you know.
And then the self-regulation, you want to keep your emotions, especially the negative ones, in check. And later on, we're going to be asking you about your emotions, but it's so important that if you are maybe angry today or you may be feeling resentful, how do you keep that to yourself so it doesn't impact someone else and impact a different relationship that you may have? And then there's the social awareness. How do you read and interpret the emotions of others? I think that's so important so you can be empathetic, right? So if I see you and you look a bit upset, maybe I'll ask you, hey, is everything okay? Before I tell you the 10 things that I want you to do for me if this is in a work environment, right? Because maybe you're not in a good space, and so I have to be more aware, and I think a lot of this is just about awareness. How do we become more aware about what others are going through? And I think the pandemic has showed us that we're all going through something sometimes, right? We all have stressors in our life. And so are we paying attention to what stressors people are having in their lives? And then relationship management. I think when we interact with others, you know, there's that interpersonal skills that become more important.
And, you know, that looks like verbal and nonverbal communication. Because if I'm standing here, you know, you can tell something's wrong versus if I'm open and like smiling. So how do we pay attention to body language? You know, word choice is also important, you know, and kind of like relationship management. So, you know, it also impacts the ability to handle conflict, which I think is really important, and listening to others. So this is how we talk to our clients about emotional intelligence, because once you can work with yourself, you can work with others.
So why is this important? I think that what I learned from being here is about helping women build stronger relationships. And so really emphasizing creative, stronger connections. The hope is that the women that you've met today, you can create a connection with, right? I think that a lot of us are either entrepreneurs or we have an understanding of business and we can share with other women. And I feel like today, in the last 2 days, I'm seeing maybe the stronger connections being built with people. Raise your hand if you feel like when you leave here, you at least left with 3 or 4 numbers and maybe you can contact those people afterwards and maybe have some type of connection. And I feel that as well. And I have to tell you, I am so grateful to all the women that came up to me to talk to me, knowing I live on the other side of the world, but they still are willing to have a connection with me. To say, you know what, I want to learn more about you. I want to learn more about what you do. Let's see how we can connect. These things become so important. But I think it's about what are you giving off to people, right? So like yesterday, I was having a really rough day. So the people that did talk to me yesterday, I was really sick. And I was really jet lagged because it took 24 hours for Kim and I to get here. So I thought about if people didn't ask me like, hey, are you okay? And I didn't explain to them what was going on, they may have thought that I wasn't engaged, or I didn't really want to be here, or I wasn't grateful. But because I share with them, right? I think that's why it's so important to share what's going on with you sometimes and how you're feeling, that people can be more understanding, right? And Preeta? Okay. She came in today and she said to me, oh my God, you look so much better. And then throughout the day, she saw how joyous I was and how much I was smiling. And she noticed it. It's because I let her know what was going on with me yesterday. So she was able to see a change in my behavior and know that I wasn't maybe engaged yesterday just because of all the things that was going on, but it wasn't because I didn't want to be here. So I think that that's why it's so important that we share with each other. You don't have to share everything that's going on in your life, and I understand that, right? But if
Hold some things back.
right, you can hold some things back, but if there is something going on that it's worth someone knowing, so they can have a better understanding of you in that moment and what you're feeling, then I think that becomes so much more important. So now I feel like there was a real bond and a real connection. And then there was other women that I spoke to who saw and noticed a difference in me today because I was feeling better. But if I never told them what was going on with me, they would have no idea. And so sometimes it's so important to do that. Go ahead.
And I think what we want to highlight with that is empathy leads to grace, compassion, and kindness. You know, we've all been sick. We all know what it feels like, you know, and so that you were able to receive that and it was able to be given for, you know, better connections. The next one we want to talk about is communicating more effectively. Again, word choice. This allows people to understand what's going on with you, not take things personal. You know, when we don't tell people what we're feeling, they make assumptions. Yeah. You know, and we can't be supportive if we don't know what's happening. And so allowing people to know what's going on really does help to build connections, but also just, you know, better emotional intelligence, you know. And then lastly, navigate conflict and difficult conversations, you know. There has to be a commitment to honesty and dialogue. If I'm in a relationship with you and we are in conflict, what happens after the conflict? Have we done damage to one another? Are we working to repair or are we working to be right? You know, there's a phrase, you can be right or you can be happy. So I think that's really important. And conflict doesn't need to be negative, right? If your intentions are to just continue the relationship and be more mindful of how we, you know, show up for one another. So now we're gonna ask you some questions.
So, okay, just so you guys know, everything that we do is super interactive. So we want to bring you guys in. We don't just want to be up here presenting. For us, that's no fun, right? We don't want to be talking at you, talking to you. We want you guys to really see how you can be a part of this as well. And so I also understand that this might not be comfortable for everyone. And so we also know that everyone may not participate. And that's okay. But for the ones who want to participate, we would love for you to do that so you can really start to think more about yourself and how these things that we're talking about impacts you too, okay?
And so for work, business, or home, pick a choice, figure it out. What emotions do you often feel at work, right? Like if you're in an unhealthy environment, you're gonna feel maybe disappointment or maybe some anger or frustration. So those would be words that would come up. But if you're in a healthy one, you'll feel motivated and like you're a leader or excited. And so it's just really a reflection of where you are currently with the things in your life and how they make you feel, right? Like, you know, we gave you a few words. Do you want to give a few more?
Yeah, but I just want you to know, it says we cannot have emotional intelligence if there's no acknowledgement of what we feel. So what we would like for you guys to do is actually talk to each other. Is that okay?
Can you do it?
Yeah. So I said, you know, we can do pairs of two, or where a bunch of us are at a table, or you can even write it down. Because we want you to do whatever makes you feel most comfortable. But it is important to start acknowledging, what am I feeling? Once I understand what I'm feeling, then I'll know what to do with that feeling.
How many of the entrepreneurs are feeling tired?
We're entrepreneurs too. And we both have full-time jobs, and we also have a business. So we are often just B. So, and also I'm a caretaker, right? So I think about all the roles that we talked about earlier. My father had a stroke in the pandemic, and so now he's come to live with me and my husband, and I take care of him. So it feels like I have 3 jobs, and it feels like I'm working throughout the day, right? And I was talking to someone earlier. We were talking earlier about boundaries, and it's just like I don't have time to turn off. So often I feel tired, and often I also feel a little annoyed because I have so much to do. And I think it's so important for us to think about, what am I feeling, right? What emotions are coming up for me so I can acknowledge them and I can deal with them. And I have to make sure they don't negatively impact other people. So if you guys are okay, what emotions do you often feel at work? And what do you feel at home? And then you can look at, what emotions do you notice in others?
Are people reflecting those emotions back to you? Because that's an indicator that maybe you want to look at that.
Right, if we're dealing with unequal pay, we're dealing with discrimination, like we're dealing with some of the negatives, but also some positive things that come from work, there has to be some type of emotion that comes up in you. So if you guys would either talk to each other, you guys can do
Or
2
write
or
it down.
3, or write it down, or do it as a table. We're gonna come around and we wanna talk with you guys a little bit, but we feel like it's so important for us to just know what's going on with us. We can't expect other people to understand us if we have no idea what's going on with ourselves, okay? So I
We should have
expect
had
you
some
talking
music.
now.
We should have had some music.
So what I wanna know from you guys, what do you guys do to take care of yourself? And do you guys talk about self-care? Is that something that's talked about?
Yeah.
Because in America, for Black women, it's kind of more of a new thing. White women have been talking about self-care for a very long time, but we're trying to figure out, how do I take care of myself with the multiple roles that we play? So if it's okay, I would love to hear from some of you guys. Just raise your hand. What do you do for self-care? What is the thing that you do to take care of yourself that feels good? Yes, thank you.
So I spend time with my dog.
Okay.
I exercise.
Thank
Get
you.
outside.
Okay, go ahead.
I listen to music, I meditate sometimes.
Oh, good. All right.
Music impacts your emotions
All right, I'm
so much.
gonna get to everyone. Go
I
ahead.
love it.
What do you do for self-care? Huh?
Meditation is there.
Meditation?
Music, and then journaling also.
Journaling is amazing, yes. Sometimes it's so good to get the thoughts out of your head and get them on paper so you don't feel like you're overthinking. That's amazing. Who else? Yes. Are we just gonna take this around? All right, let's do it.
Uh-oh, it's not.
Oh, it's on. It's not on.
What I do is, firstly, I'm very fond of nature.
Yes.
My plants, pets, everybody. I have so many children to raise. I'm their mother. Though I'm not married and I don't have any issue. But right now, because of lack of time, I can only concentrate on the plants in my terrace.
Okay.
So that's a good time I spent. Another thing, I think, even if it is, we were just a while ago we were discussing, even if it is your passion, if you're continuously doing the same thing, the age is burnt out.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I'm into IT, I'm into medicine. So what I do is in my spare time, I read about archaeology, history.
Oh, I love it.
Just go away
Something
from the
completely
subject.
different from what you do.
Yeah,
Exactly.
sometimes you
Just
need something
go
different.
away. And otherwise, cook what you feel like eating.
All right, I'll take it. So who else
to
wants
your
to take
house.
it?
Thank you.
You want to tell us? Okay, okay.
When I'm stressed, there are 2 things which I do. One, I watch movies
Okay.
all across the world, like Iranian movies and this movie and that. And the second thing is I catch hold of people and make them laugh.
Oh, I love it. Laughter is good.
So I'm asked that, was I a born joker or with time I became one?
Yeah, this is important because we can learn from each other, right? Maybe something someone else is doing for self-care, maybe you want to do as well. Okay?
Go walking together.
Okay. Did you want to tell us?
Painting.
Painting, yeah,
right.
something creative. Okay, yes. Okay, go ahead. Can I get another mic?
So initially, I would go to cafes to relax, but now that I own a cafe, that is that increases my stress level. I do yoga, and I think a long bath or taking a long shower is very underrated. Scrubbing my feet, putting on a face mask, and lighting some candles. Though it's very commercialized and vain, but I really like it.
It's relaxing, yes. So I think the first thing I want to talk about, and we'll go back and forth now, is practice self-compassion. Okay? Because a lot of times we can be our worst critics, right? A lot of times we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. So how do we be more compassionate with ourselves? When we talk to ourselves, how do we be more compassionate? I think that will help with the stress that you have at work and also the stress that you have at home. Just being more understanding with yourself.
I can't tell you how many times I beat myself up because I didn't send an email before I left or I didn't follow up. And so I think compassion is really important because it's things that we do ourselves. Practicing gratitude, right, is really important. We found that, like telling people to do that when you can put yourself in a state where you see the things you have, it minimizes the thoughts about the things you don't have because then you start to resent that. And The quickest way to not get to those things is to continually resent not having them, right? So it's counterproductive to not have gratitude because you won't get to other things. So I'm grateful for what I have now, and I would like to get where I want to later, versus I can't believe I don't have that.
Ask for what you need. So a lot of times for women in America, especially Black women, we don't feel seen or heard by other people. And so sometimes we don't know how to ask for what it is that we want. So I think a lot of times we want people to read our minds, right? We want them to know what we need, know what we're thinking. And I want to just say that can be very unfair, right? And so how do you advocate for yourself? How do you learn to tell people what you need? It becomes so important, okay? And that's a good way to manage stress so that you don't have to think about the person that you're working with. Well, do they know that I want them to do this? No, because I haven't told them. So how do we really ask for what we want?
Find a support network. This is super important, I think, for all people, especially for women, when you are trying to navigate spaces. It's great to see people who you want to aspire to, but also people that can give you kind of like the scoop. Like working with someone who's probably been at a job longer than you, and they tell you like, this is how you navigate this, talk to this person this way, or these are the channels. There's a lot of formal, but there's way more informal rules that people don't tell you when you're in spaces, and they make assumptions that you're supposed to know them. But no one told me, so how am I supposed to know them? And sometimes you don't know them until you encounter them, and then there's conflict. And so having people who kind of know the lay of the land. Entrepreneurs, people sharing what they've gone through, I think has been really impactful for us to hear that. So this felt like a great support network, and I'm sure that people are going to be each other's support network after this, because it feels like there was a lot of connection with you all.
And then maintain social connections. I think that when you are going through a lot at work and you're feeling really stressed, it's good to have people who you can laugh with. I think that becomes so important. Who are the people that you enjoy being around? Who are the people you enjoy being with? Make sure you're calling them and finding time for lunch and for dinner or for breakfast, just to be around people that you really care about. And this became so important in the pandemic when a lot of us were on lockdown and we weren't able to see the people that we cared about. And so in my practice, I would speak to people and they would tell me, well, I haven't spoken to my friend, or I haven't seen them in 6 months or a year. Maybe they're not my friend anymore. Maybe they don't want to hang out. And I'm like, no, that doesn't mean that. You don't know what they were going through in the pandemic. It may have been very stressful, but you should still reach out, because isolating yourself is not good either. So it's really important to have great people in your life.
Take breaks. A lot of us like to power through a day. We don't take lunch. We don't take a nap. We can, make it, and we don't take water breaks. No one's doing the things to take care of themselves. And then we wonder why we're tired and sluggish, have headaches and things, or we're a little hangry. I think it's important to take space for yourself. And those little breaks really do help you get through a day, or they help you reset, which is really important. And some of you may know that. I know that. I know, I should take breaks, but I absolutely do not. I can tell you all the things, but I do not take breaks because I'm constantly on emails. And so it's a reminder. You may know it, but it's a reminder if you're not doing it. That's what we need to remind ourselves to do it sometimes.
And I think you need to prioritize your tasks. Sometimes you got to figure out, if I have 5 hours, I can't do 10 things, right? So what can I get done in those hours, and what's most important, so I won't feel so much stress, right? If I have a deadline for this thing, I probably need to get that done. The other thing needs to go to the wayside. So really, really figuring out, how do I prioritize the task? How do I prioritize my time? It's going to be really important.
I want to say something to this, because I think I like to put a little thing on there that makes me feel good if I didn't get through my list. Like, oh, I did that. I like to check things off. Well, at least I got this little thing done, because that gave me joy. Get outside and take a walk for 10 minutes is always on my list. And when I get to check it off, I feel great. If I didn't finish all the other things, it's okay. But sometimes I've got to find the joy in, doing things.
So how many of us take time off? Raise your hand if you take time off.
Yes.
Okay, nice. I love this. So who didn't raise their hand for taking time off? Because if you're okay with telling us why you haven't, is that okay? If someone hasn't taken time off, what's stopping you?
Work.
Is anyone okay with it? Okay, I have someone. Thank you. You want to tell? Oh, okay, I'll bring this. Come on.
She's got it.
She has one back here? Yeah. Please tell us why you haven't. I think that's important too.
It's more of a guilt trip and a constant, I think, a feeling of being inferior as compared to others in whichever place I'm put in.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful.
Can you say that louder?
Say it
Because I
one more
don't think the
time.
microphone is on. I don't think I can hear.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
are.
It's more of a guilt trip and the feeling that I'm inferior as compared to the others present around me.
Wow.
So do you think the others that are present around you, that they're not taking off time, they're just able to continue to work, and so you want to do the same?
Maybe not that exactly, but
Okay.
that's a feeling I have for myself.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for being vulnerable. We really appreciate that.
Thank you. There were things that I didn't know, and I had to learn them, and I had to be okay with not knowing them, but knowing that I had the will, the determination, also the resources to get that information. And so I think it's really important to know, like, I'm capable, because sometimes we don't feel like that if we don't know something. And I'm also someone that needs all of the information before I feel like I'm an expert or know something. Sometimes I just need to know a piece and be okay with that.
Does anyone practice affirmations? Oh, yes. Give me a good affirmation. What do you tell yourself?
I am possible.
Yeah.
Yes, I am possible. What do you tell yourself?
I am
Spiritually and financially abundant.
Yes.
Oh, I am spiritually and financially abundant. That was a good one. Anyone else has one they want to share? Okay, we got one back here. Go ahead.
I just tell myself I am what I am and I'm happy with it.
I am what I am and I'm happy with it. Anyone else? Any other good affirmation that someone can take? I might steal that one. The spiritually and financially abundant. I'm taking it.
I do what I love and I love what I do.
Wow.
Yes.
Woo.
Anyone else?
Oh, we have.
Okay.
Here, come
Thank you.
I'm happy and fortunate with what I have, and I'm so very contented with it that I am what I am.
Yes. Thank you. That's a great way to end that. I love that. Yes, we are. All the things and more. If you have them and you didn't share, we know you have them. And thank you for those who did.
The last one.
Okay, last one. Setting boundaries and saying no. This has definitely minimized so much of my stress. Before I learned how to set boundaries, everyone asked me to do things and I said yes to it because I was a people pleaser. And I also, people saw me as capable of doing something, so I was proud that I was being asked by people to do things without realizing that I was being run ragged. And I wasn't telling people, oh, I have this other thing to do because I didn't want them to see me as vulnerable or weak. And no one cared about what I was doing or how I was feeling because I didn't say anything, but I also wasn't talking about, like, I made another obligation, I can't do this. And I have what's called time blindness, where I think I can do everything and I have all the time to do it, and I don't. And so this was a really hard thing for me to do because, you know, the girl in the family, you know, yeah, you gotta do it all. And so setting boundaries was really difficult for me. It felt so hard. It felt like one of the hardest things in my life that telling my mother, Mom, I'm sorry, I can't do this, was so difficult. And she looked at me and she said, what do you mean you can't do this? I was like, I really can't do this. I don't feel well. And she said, okay, I have to understand that because I would have normally been as sick as could ever and still would do it. And so it was important for me to honor what I can and can't do, my physical, emotional limitations, because now she asks me, she say, hey, can you pull out your calendar and tell me if you're free on this day? Because I was able to say something to people in a way lovingly and not be angry about it or reactive, because I just had to be honest, like I'm doing too much and I'm saying yes to everything, and it's really impacting me once I started this business. So more time is eating up.
Raise your hand if you say no. Yes, please.
This is a very interesting one. The one about saying no. I think culturally it's very hard for us to say no.
Yes.
As Indians.
Okay, for us
That's
too.
hard for us too.
For Black Americans.
It's very hard for us
It's
too.
interesting because, and I worked with a lot of American organizations, and I realized what often happens is that someone here knows they can't do it, but they'll say, I will try.
Yeah.
I will try means it's from the goodness of my heart I want to do it, but I know freaking well that I can't.
Yeah.
So I realized that, and I see this a lot in younger people, how do you say no without sounding or feeling rude?
Yes.
I think that's
Feeling
the skill.
offensive.
People will say, I can't do it because I'm busy, and that sounds rude.
Right.
So how do you get to find language to say how busy and stretched you are, and that you mean well, but you really can't do it?
Right.
This is exactly what I think it's something that women need to learn a lot.
I don't know if there is language, right? I think, so when I think about it, is there anything that I could say to make you feel better? Or are you still going to feel bad when I say no, right? Is it still going to come off rude? Or are you going to feel offended because I said no? And so sometimes we talk about, can no be a complete sentence? And it's not an easy thing to do, and I want to be very clear about that. But sometimes we have to come to a place where if we know that we can't do it, does it really matter what excuse I give you? Are you still going to be mad at me?
So I look at it as self-preservation.
Yes. Thank you.
I just can't do anymore, so I'm dying. You want me to? No, sure you don't, so please accept the no. It's effectively that.
And I think, when it comes to families or whatever, when I think back about how I was able to do it, I just was like, I need your support to help me do this because I'm not doing well. And here's why. And if you can help me do things this way, if you can ask me about this, and if I can't do it right now, is there a time when we can do it later? It's not no right, it's not no forever.
It's not a blanket.
It's just no right
add
now.
something here.
Oh, okay, let's go.
Yeah, so just not to please others or not to be rude, it's also sometimes to please ourselves, We need to prove to ourselves that I can do this, I can do that, so many things, So because of that, we get overstressed and we don't, we want to prove ourselves. Like I was struggling with this a lot because I used to never say no to anything, I said, chalo ye bhi try karte, chalo ye bhi try karte, chalo ye bhi try karte. But then at the end of the thing, nothing was happening. I could not do anything. Exactly. So I was trying to prove myself, So that was, I learned that over the period of time that I don't need to prove myself to anyone, to myself too. That was very important.
Even at work and asking someone else, hey, are you able to help me and take on this piece and I can do this piece and then we can get it done? Or at home, just telling people, hey, I can compromise, maybe I can do half of the thing that you asked me to and not all of it.
I just think that, again, we know that that's hard. Culturally, that's hard for us too, because my mother's like,
we've been conditioned to say yes, especially in our families, right? Especially as the girls. If I'm asked to do something, I just have to say yes. And my mom, I'm one of 7, so I have 6 siblings, and so when any of my siblings ask anything of me, the expectation is I'm supposed to do it, but also they're supposed to do it for me as well. So the expectations within the family, we're all supposed to help each other out. And so growing up, I couldn't say no. And so it was something as an adult, I had to realize it wasn't helpful for my well-being. And I had to do what was best for me. So there's that commonality with us as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
All right, so go ahead.
So how do we regulate our emotions, our thoughts, our behaviors so we can achieve personal and professional goals? Because that's what a lot of this is about, right? How do we achieve our goals when we're still dealing with our emotions and the thoughts that we're having and our behaviors? So these are some coping mechanisms that we came up with that we feel like, I guess we talked about a little of this. I probably was a little ahead of myself today. But Kim, talk about practicing mindfulness and what can that look like?
Mindfulness, I think it's not a buzzword, but it's quickly becoming one for people. It's really about being present with people, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Like, this person looks stressed. I've noticed some things about them, and I'm going to ask them if they're okay, right? Like just being aware, being present, and then acting on it. That's just kind of that's how you connect with people, and without judgment, right? Like sometimes when I think about, before mindfulness came into my life, I would make assumptions about people like, this person's lazy or they never get back to me. And so it created all this angst around relationships with people, whereas I had to learn just maybe there's something going on. Why can't I just ask? Because I didn't want to intrude or I didn't want to be, rude, what's going on? You know what, I can ask that in a different way. I can ask, is everything okay? Versus being really angry with them because they haven't delivered something, right? So I think, again, word choice can still get it done. It's just how you put those words together.
And positive self-talk. So studies show that 80% of our thoughts are negative. That's a lot. And you probably, I don't know if some of you guys notice it or not, but 80% of our thoughts are negative. So it's really important that we are trying to combat those negative thoughts with positive ones and really kind of talking to ourselves in a more positive way. So that becomes really important.
I think yesterday when someone mentioned imposter syndrome on the panel, and it just was like, oh, that's where the negative self-talk comes from. Like, I'm not good enough. Someone said they, felt inferior. Like, yeah, we're, those are the things we tell ourselves, which we get in the way. We get in our own way sometimes when we talk like that.
Yeah, and again, like we talked about earlier, express your emotions. You have to acknowledge what you're feeling, because there's no changes that can be made if you don't acknowledge what's going on. Okay.
Setting boundaries. I think boundaries are so important because they tell people how to interact with you. They tell you that, okay, I'm not a morning person. Please do not contact me. It goes better, and I'm more optimal in the afternoon or the evening. So if you want to work with me, please don't contact me in the mornings because I'm not a morning person. So it allows people to understand how to give me grace, compassion, and kindness if you send me something and I'm not responding, but also there's an understanding that I'm going to get back to you later on in the evening.
And then the last one, which I think a lot of us are doing, is prioritizing self-care. So it's really great to see that.
Yeah. Okay, so last slide. So we wanted to talk about some tools to help us with some of the things. The first one is reframing. Reframing is beautiful because it helps to combat those negative thoughts, right? Like, what if it goes wrong? Reframe that and says, what if it goes right? What are the possibilities, right? So doing those things really helps you to look at situations in a way that's more positive, more possible, and you have more control. Because sometimes we don't feel like we have control of situations or things because of the way we think about them or the way we talk about them. And there's places where you can get control, you may not have full control, and so it's really thinking about, like, how can I impact this or affect this versus it's all gone to heck and there's everything wrong and I can't do anything about it. And I think for me as an entrepreneur, that has been very helpful because I would have been stuck if I couldn't go forward because of all the things I didn't know, or the money didn't come in because this client took too long, was taking too long to pay, and now I got to do this. And so it's like, well, you know what, that's okay because I have X, Y, and Z. And so reframing is really a great way to kind of recast like what's happening in your life so that you can move forward and not get stuck in whatever that emotion is or that situation.
And I think, again, active problem solving. How do we problem solve on the fly sometimes? It becomes really important so that whatever problem we have, it doesn't continue for longer than it needs to, right? And I think that'll help us with our emotions because in the moment, if we can figure it out, or we can ask for help to have someone else help us figure it out. So active problem solving is important.
Emotional release. Just let it go. You know what? I'm feeling tired today. I'm a little frustrated. I'm sick, right? Like, sharing with people where you are is really important because it allows them to see humanity in you, right? It allows them to empathize with you. It allows them to say, you know what, I had that thing too. Like, maybe I can give you some tools, right? Or maybe I can help you with that. Like, I think a lot of people don't realize that. People just like to help. And if they don't know what you need, then how can they help you? So, then sensory relaxation. We talked about the creative aspect of things, drawing, painting, coloring, things that engage like your right brain, your left brain. I think a lot of times, for me, focusing on business and things that I have to do and project management really takes me out of being creative with my business. And sometimes I need to like rest and I need to dream, scheme, and vision something different, right? Like yes, dream, scheme, and vision. Because I think sometimes we get so wound up, like when we're just focusing on something. And so sometimes you have to let your mind drift or let your body take over, like that body-mind connection is really important. So when I think about sensory relaxation, I just think about, just things that I can do, like, I don't know what people do, like somebody said they play the violin or, drawing, painting, those kind of things I think are very helpful to, combating some of the burnout and fatigue that we have, and can give you ways of being more creative. Okay, and then lastly, we have what we're calling reconfiguration. So, when you think about an issue or a conflict, and you go through it, you don't realize that the new outcome of that relationship or that the issue that you encountered is going to be different. So you can't go back to whatever issue is. You can't repair a relationship if you're in conflict and you've done all these things. So you have to figure out how do you move forward with people in this new dynamic based on, you know, maybe some conflict you were not able to resolve. Because sometimes people can't come back from those things, right? I've made bad business decisions, and I'll just be really honest, and I've lost money. And I was like, what did I do? But guess what? It was a learning opportunity, and that's how I had to choose to look at it. Like, I'm out some money, but it gave me an opportunity. It was an expensive lesson. So that's how I choose to look at things versus letting them sit on my heart, you know, and take me out of what I need to do. So that is the end of our presentation. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for participating. We appreciated everyone that, you know, joined in and listened.
I know we're going back up on the stairs, so this is our book, and then we have a podcast as well. And then every month we have a happy hour, and it's virtual, it's online. Women come and we'll have different topics, and we just talk. So we always just want to be a safe space for women to talk about things that are on their minds, and so those are the things that we do. So thank you, and we'll be on the panel, and we'll figure out what's going on next. Bye, guys. Thank you.
So a little bit of a story here. I had Kiara, my daughter, when I was 24. And I was in London. I was working with RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland. And the kind of flexibility that I got at work, what it made me feel is, suppose like I was doing a 3-day week with them, and I was also doing my postgrad in management, and I had a newborn.
My responsibilities.
Right. So, but you know, those 3 days, I would always put myself out so much more because I was so grateful for the kind of flexibility I was getting. I mean, I was even at that point of time, I was even, you know, whatever, breastfeeding. So I had all, you know, all that timing to match and everything. And I realized that the kind of effort I was putting in those 3 days was something that you cannot buy with just extra salary or perks. It was my respect for that organization. So currently in my workforce, I've got 10 return to work moms. And all of them, I mean, this is what I've done over the last 1 year actually. Earlier also, so I've done it consciously now. Earlier I never differentiated or gave them any special facilities, but consciously I've started to do that now because there is so much of a huge talent pool in India where people are just not being, because you know, the creche systems and after school creches are not very prominent and dominant in India or Kolkata. So after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's very difficult for young mothers to keep their children, you know, with any, everyone doesn't have a support system like your in-laws or your, you know, your mother at home. So it's very difficult. They do want to work, but they don't have the option to keep, and not everyone is earning in figures where they can afford childcare or they can, you know, afford a nanny or things like that. So so what we started to do as a company procedure is they have half a day work from home and half a day work from office. But that also is flexible. I mean, they can actually work from 10 o'clock at night if they want to. I'm not going to say that this is easy for the employer. It is something that is difficult because she might have clients who walk in the evening, and so it's a two-way process. I think they also need to be flexible. But what I feel is, I know all of them are not going to feel like I did when I got the opportunity, but what I feel is those hours that they do work, hopefully they're going to make up for all the flexibility that they get. So there might be quite a few mothers here who have started the entrepreneurial journey because they couldn't do a 9-to-5 corporate job. And you can ask.
Trust me, this work doesn't happen easy. There'll be days when you will question, you will second guess yourself for everything that you're doing. But like you're sitting here and appreciating the flexibility that you had one day, there will be somebody who's not leaving the workforce because you're doing what you're doing. And this will have an impact in the future. You may not see it right now. And it's amazing because honestly, I speak with people who work in the DEI space across companies. Not too many manage to do what you're doing. It's remarkable.
Another thing is, it's not just the work hour flexibility. When you are at home, you lose touch with technology. There are a lot of software skills which are developing every day. So you have actually, for example, AutoCAD, 3D Max, these are the softwares we work with. If you don't work with it for about 2-3 years, new
the technology evolves.
Correct. Yeah. So it's also a limited amount of
choice at the workplace. I think this is the time that we all should take this pledge and we make this promise to ourselves. And of course, offering help, building a community together where we can make other people safe in that space. And I believe that yes, taking these actions can have a better future. So with this note, I am ending this panel here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.